Hello, I'm David Skvor, artist and author of the book, The Trinity of Art. It's been a while since I've done a podcast and it's been winter here, so I'm coming out of hibernation. Still got the fire going, so if my painting bursts into flames, we might be in a bit of strife. Today I want to let you into my world of my theory on colour, the colour theory. Now, some of the great artists, Kandinsky, Klee, Franz Marc, they all had theories on colour. Kandinsky, I believe, was a musical composer, and he had a theory that was related to music. And Franz Marc, I'm of the belief that his colours had some spiritual symbolism which he employed in his paintings. Now, my theory is probably not as scientific or, what would you say, as intricate as those. And the point about having a theory on colour, we should all have one. And it's when you go to school, they teach you the colour wheel, you know, red, yellow, blue, and then you mix this, blah, 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 and that happens. Well, my theory's a lot more basic. I'm rather much more an instinctive painter, and I'll run you through it. My theory on colours, not as complex as those, and as I said earlier in some of my podcasts, I'm a very instinctive painter, and it comes from within, my theory on colour, and my, I suppose, philosophy on my art is line, shape and colour, the Trinity of Art. And remember, we all went to art school, and if you did, and they had a colour wheel and it had primary colours, red, yellow, blue. They're the primary colours. If you mix red and yellow, you get orange. If you mix yellow and blue, you get green. And I think if you mix red and blue, you get purple. They become the secondary colours. Well, I was lost at that point. So I've thrown that all out the window. It was a bit too hard for me. Anyway, my theory on colour. As you can see, there's a painting here which, once again, mostly lines, shapes and colour. Colour is probably the defining factor or the most influential part of the painting. My theory on colour, okay, it's pretty childlike, so we've probably all done it. Sky is blue, sun's yellow, grass is green. I know that sounds a bit dumb, but to me, I like simple lines and basic colours to convey images and emotions. Well, we all know that yellow is a happy colour. Blue, sky, happy. Green, grass, warm. So there's my theory. And like I say, I'm not going to be written up in any great artistic journals for my fantastic theory on colour. But how do I use it? How do I apply those colours? Now, I remember years ago my son said to me, "Dad, you've got to get some new colours on your palette. You're using the same old colours." And I thought about it, and I started mucking around with, blending things and doing this and that. And in the end, I thought, no, we're just splitting hairs, son. I like the primary colours because I want to be able to speak plainly to you. So, red, yellow, blue. And I do mess around with them a little bit, but not much. Let's take this painting, for example. Now, once again, it probably appears quite naive. It's one of my early paintings. But to me, it packs a punch. Okay, blue sky, white stars, white moon. The brain goes ding, yep. White snow. I used a pearl colour there just because I did. Now, colours react to each other. Going back to that colour wheel thing, which I don't really understand, but someone pointed that out in this painting. I think the second layer of mixing those colours gives you secondary colour, which then the opposite side of the wheel, apparently there's a complementary colour. So I can't really explain it. I have to go back to school to learn it all again. But see, purple and yellow work. They complement each other. Now, black and white. We know they're not colours, but they sit nicely together. Red and green fight. And you'll often see a shimmering between, when the two colours are laid side by side, there's a shimmering in between which is a grey. They can't sit together. Now, I've used that and employed that in this painting with a romantic couple, which my mum and dad. Opposites attract. So I've tried to use those colours instinctively, knowing that they fight, to make them one. So being a naive painting, it's not really that naive. I've used a bit of white here because to separate. So there's things you can do. Now, I've got, you know that colour wheel thing they did at school? Well, I chucked it out. Now, I've invented my own ones, and this is how I paint. So I'll just grab a couple. There they are. There's the mess of them. This one here was the one I did for White Kite, which I think is one of my earlier episodes, my podcast on perspective. So basically I'd get a colour, splash it on, and then put one next to it. And try and find that tension and that relationship. Now, I've said in my book that I spin my colour wheels until they settle and the colours are in the right place. So once again, there's no scientific theory that ticks this off and ticks that. It's a gut feeling. So I'll place one colour next to another. Now, you'll see here also there's white and there's black. Now these have a great effect on colours. Now in my book I've written, back to my notes, here's my auto cue here, look at that, real technical. Colour wheels, what did I say? Wrestling match. Let's have a look at that. Colours might be a wrestling match. Some colours lift others and throw them away. Others stomp on others and flatten them. Others are a tag team, pulling others in to assist them. Yet others wear black and try to put the sleeper hold onto others. Also, there are no rules about the use of colours, but in my ring, there were no holds barred. I'm using the analogy of a boxing match or a wrestling match because colours interplay with each other and have an effect. Red. Let's look at red. This colour fights. It makes the other colours jump. Kandinsky said, you have to have a heightened sense of colour. He was right. All the colours fight. It's a boxing match. Everyone strikes a blow against the other. So even if I just put a blob of yellow there, let's call it the sun. If I put white around it, you go, it's the sun. If I put blue around it, it changes the complexity of the yellow in some way. So everything has an effect on everything else. What else can I say? Black and grey. Black and white. Now, we all know that they're not colours, but most people sort of refer to them as colours. And in the point of the exercise, black and grey do have an effect. Black and white, sorry. So I've written something that it's a bit abstract, and I suppose many of my things are a bit abstract, what I say. Sometimes I don't even get it. But if you've got black and white and you mix them, what do you get? Grey. But then I looked at that and I said, well, and then I've written this. A shadow, which we'll call a shade, is a lighter shade of black and not a darker shade of white. And there's no grey areas there. Now, I thought about it before. I was out having a cuppa. If you have black and you have to put a lot of white in black to make it come to grey. But with white, you only need a tiny bit and it's no longer white. It gets to grey real quick. And I thought, why is that? And I think the world is light, at daytime anyway, and then everything else is added to it. So I don't know where that theory's going, but it's just an observation like much of my stuff. Now, I also wrote a funny thing, which I think is pretty funny, about colours. Where are you? And I'll give you a painting I'll show you afterwards, but we had black and white television and then they introduced colour. Things became a lot less clear and a lot more shady from then on. Let's have a look at black and white. Another early piece, rather naive. Black and white. You don't need colour in this. The brain works it out. Now, for argument's sake, you'll know her lips are red and her tunic might even be purple. Your brain will work that out. In the old days when we watched black and white telly, you knew the girl had a yellow dress on or a red dress, a pink ribbon. The man was suntan. All the shades and that were there. So somehow the brain worked it out. Once we start messing around with colour, it gets pretty tricky. And everything has an effect. And things can go very, very wrong. Things might not work anymore. Here's an example. This one I did a bowl of fruit, which I'll probably do some work on later as a podcast. So what I've done is I've placed colours down, but I've used grey in this one as a background, and it seemed to make the other colours pop. Like grey and red seem to just go bang. But see the grey here with the green seems to recede into it. This colour wheel ended up a painting, and I've said in my book, I almost reckon I could sell my colour wheels better than I can my paintings. Some people said, oh, they're fantastic. And I'm going, oh, they're only experiments. So this one I call God's Grey. The reason I did that, I thought, well, the sky's blue and grass is green. And in your garden, all the flowers and that, they just seem to pop. So I mucked around. Blue sky, green plants, brown earth, just to settle things. So I dabbed colours on there. And you know the funniest thing? They just pop. They're not part of the blue. They're not part of the green. The green and the blue affects the colours. Theory. Now, grey. Grey is a very, very important colour, even though it's not a colour. What have I written here? Somewhere in here. like I say, well-oiled machine, this lot. Here we go. People don't understand how violent red and grey are together. Black and grey, white and grey, black, white and grey, they're easy. So people don't understand the battles that go on in my studio down there, trying to work with these colours. Now, this is about grey. Grey doesn't sit within any space on a canvas, neither negative space or even perspectives of space. It seems to hover or settle wherever it finds the least resistance. Maybe grey can walk through walls. Grey's got no friends. It's a colour that doesn't belong to anybody or anything. Now, later on, I mentioned that I'll be talking about my ghosts. And now they're all becoming grey. It makes sense. Now, I did a colour wheel for a painting called The Vanguard. And this is to prove, or not prove, to demonstrate how powerful grey is in its own subtle way. That's my colour wheel for The Vanguard. I just use grey. It has a life of its own. It's one of those mysterious colours. So, I don't know if I've explained or enlightened you to the theory of colour, because I don't really know what I'm doing in that respect. It's instinctive. I certainly haven't reinvented the wheel, and I'm back. I'm back from hibernation, and I knew today was going to be a rough ride because I'm pretty rusty and everything's on the fly. So I hope you enjoyed an insight into my theory on colour, and hopefully I've got something really good for you next time, something a bit more polished than this. Thanks.